the founder and the leader at the CEO at Novitas Communications, and we are a full-service PR firm. We specialize in 3 areas: corporate communication, issue management, and crisis communication. We are industry agnostic, so we get to do a lot of really fun things. Today, I'm at the Colorado School of Mines talking about semiconductors, which is not what I went to school for. I actually went to school for business. I did not major in PR or communications. And with that, I think I'll turn it over to my colleague, Madeline. So Madeline works for me, but she has promised that she will disclose the good, the bad, and the ugly. So she's not going to sugarcoat anything. And we have the kind of relationship where I think that's fine. And like, we can do that. And so Madeline, I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Madeline Bendelin. I'm an associate at Novitas Communications, and I went to school at CU Boulder, and I majored in strategic communication with an emphasis in public relations and 2 minors in media studies and Jewish studies. And I graduated in December 2020, and now I'm here. I started working at Novitas in June 2020.
All right. So I'll just jump in here. All right, I'm Jay Kazan. I am a Denver native, also went to CU, so really excited to be part of this panel. I work for CIG, and I've been there almost 7 years now, but we are a Denver-based full service public relations, public information, and creative agency. We work mostly in the transportation and construction industries. And some of our clients include CDOT, DIA, City of Denver. So we have a lot going on, and I'm just excited to be here and share some things that I've found as part of what I do at CIG. Is I'm part of the hiring committee. So looking forward to answering questions and just sharing some insights that I have.
Well, thanks to you both. Apparently I'm moderating this, so sorry for all you attendees. But I think I do all the hiring at Novitas. We really look for people who are talented and committed and passionate. And one of the things I tell people always is you should treat this like your 5th year at school, your first job out of college. It should be a time of learning. It's going to take you longer. You're going to feel like you're not good at your job. That's sometimes true, but you're learning. And the idea is to come into any new job with a spirit of learning and excitement and passion and commitment. So with that, I'm actually going to ask these 2 lovely contestants about the effort they put into networking or what they are seeing out there. So Jake, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the efforts that you're seeing for people with networking with you, or what you did? You've been out 6 years, 7 years?
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. 7 years. Yep.
And so what are some of the things that you did to help land your first job?
For me, a lot of it was when I was looking for a job starting out, LinkedIn was starting to become kind of what it is today. So one thing I think most everybody we're talking to right now has a LinkedIn profile, but that has become one of the best ways to network, I found, especially, during and after COVID. Networking for me, getting a job, it is a lot of sending your resumes out. It's also just making those connections through who you know as well. I mean, that doesn't work for everyone, but I got a job through at CIG through a friend that I went to college with. So networking is very important. But yeah, to keep it simple right now, I'd say LinkedIn is probably the most useful tool to use if you're looking for a job right now.
Thanks, Jake. And what about you, Madeline? I mean, I know how you came to me. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of the efforts that you did? Madeline is a master networker, I think.
Thanks, Michelle. So some of the ways that I networked was really focusing on who I was going to be talking to, knowing something about them before I went into a coffee meeting or a Zoom call, and really knowing what their business model was and where their interests lie. So I could either explain to them what my interests were and how that fit in what their company does, or just to come with questions and have like a sense of knowledge, because you don't really want to go into a networking meeting without knowing anything about the company. And also, I think the biggest part about being a good networker is just like following up, communicating, thanking people for their time, like no matter the circumstance, if you end up with a job or not, or the connection doesn't go anywhere, just always keeping those people updated on what you're doing and letting them know how they helped you.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Madeline. And to put it in perspective, I actually get a lot of resumes, and I almost never get informational interview requests. I think that's a great way to network. Madeline just kind of tracked me down. Poor Madeline. I'm really bad at scheduling my calendar, but she was really persistent and terrific. And I'll say the same about Henry, who I think is on this as well. And so I think that, persistence pays off for sure. But don't be afraid to reach out to somebody and ask for an informational interview. So when you, Jake and Madeline, when you guys were going through school, did you know what kind of PR you wanted to do? Were you always in agency like mindset, or were you open to in-house opportunities as well? Jake, you can go.
Yeah. So for me, I did not know I wanted to do PR until I got a PR job. So I think that that's an important thing to just establish right off the bat, is when you're going through school and you're trying to figure out your career, you may not know, and that's okay. So for me, I was in the news editorial track. I was in journalism school at CU, and I wanted to be a newspaper writer. And, as times change and you start to, mature and realize what is actually doable to, make a living. And I switched it up. And like I said, I had a friend who worked at CIG. And so I didn't really have a preference between agency or in-house. I've kind of just learned on the fly a little bit, but having those communication skills really helped me out. But I guess my message to that question is I didn't know right off the bat. And I was able to develop a lot of PR skills on the fly.
And for me, actually, I did know that I wanted to go into PR, and I knew that I wanted to start as an agency at an agency. I think it's important to be a generalist and learn about a lot of different things. And I also was looking for like a fast-paced environment where I was doing something different every day. It goes really well with my personality. I need to be constantly like stimulated in different ways. So I knew for me, that was the best track to at least start out and get my footing in PR. And every day is different. You learn so much throughout your first year. Like Michelle said, it really is like a fifth year of college. So I'm still doing different things all the time. It's always unexpected.
So poor Madeline, what was the first thing you had to jump into besides the Haitian presidential assassination? It was like one thing and then something else. And then it was like the presidential assassination. I'm like, oh gosh, Madeline's going to quit.
I don't even remember. It's such a blur.
We do a lot of really fun things here. And for reference, I started as a biology major with a minor in organic chemistry. And communications just worked out better for me. So, and I've always worked I've never actually worked in-house. I've always worked at an agency, whether mine or I started my career at Edelman as well as APCO and what's now Finsbury, Glover, Herring. It used to be Robinson, Laird, Montgomery. So many M&A turns here. So, what are some of the tips that you have for interviewing and applying? Jake, do you want to start? Because you actually are on the hiring committee, although Madeline gets to hire people or gets to interview people too.
Yeah, absolutely. So I can kind of just go through our process at CIG a little bit and give some tips and tricks along the way. So basically for us, we put a lot of work into our job description. So we lay everything out in there, everything we're looking for. And then we're hoping that when our applicants find that, they know if we're a correct fit for them. So I think just even in applying for a job, and I know this kind of also applies to the interview process, but do your research and really know, if you're applying to a company, it's fine to just kind of shoot your resume out a bunch of different directions, but really understand who you're applying to, because that company may like you and you may be set up for an interview, which at that point it's even more important to do your research and understand the company culture and what you'll actually be doing. But yeah, just from my perspective, we post that job interview and then I field applicants. So it can be anywhere from 15 to 40 applicants. And then from there, we really dig into the resumes. So, when you're putting together your resume, I would say be concise as possible. I think a lot of employers are not as interested in maybe the club that you were in during high school, or I founded the cheese club in high school. I don't know if my employer would be as interested in that. Maybe they are. I don't know, company culture, but just keep it as concise as possible, and also just only include things that apply to the position. So that goes back to researching who you're applying and what job you're applying for. From there, we cut it
Jake,
down
I would
to
be
6.
interested in your cheese club.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hey, I might bring that back as an adult, because that was a fun time in my life. Love cheese. But yeah, from there we cut it down to 6 applicants, and that's when the interview process starts. So 6 applicants, and then basically I would say in that first interview, we're asking a lot of questions. We're listening. Don't be so nervous in your first interview, because I would say most often your employer's listening to how you respond to questions than actually what you were saying. And so just keep that in mind too. I know I was always so nervous for interviews, and did I say the right thing? Did I not? It's not as much what you say, I would say, just how you say it. From there, we cut it down to 3 or 2 applicants are finalists, and then we bring in our CEOs with our selection committee to pick a final 1 or 2 applicants. So that's kind of just the rundown of our process. I can answer questions about that. I forget your initial question. I just wanted to give that whole rundown. So if I'm just on a tangent right here, stop me, Michelle.
No, the initial question was just, what are some of your tips for interviewing and applying for jobs? And I think those are all like excellent tips. I cannot tell you how many times I get a resume that's addressed directly to me. Like, they sent it to my email that says, "Dear hiring manager." Like, there's only one MB Ling at Novitas. You totally could have been like, "Hey, Michelle, how are you?"
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
No, personalize your pitches to your employers. I can't say it enough. I've said it multiple times already, but do your research. If there's something on, the website of the company you're applying to that sticks out, where they're trying to sell themselves about their company culture, pick that out and say it during the interview. Say, "Hey, I really like what you said on your website." That means a lot to the person interviewing you. So exactly. And I would also say be persistent. When I said, sometimes we get 40 applications for one job. Of the 5 people who follow up and just emphasize how interested they are in that position, that stands out, because a lot of people don't do that. You may think that they would, but a lot of people don't do that. So I got an email today, we're hiring, and someone said, "Hey, I'm so interested in this job. I really, I'm passionate about it. I want it." That's someone that will probably be a finalist, if there are no spelling mistakes in their resume, if their cover letter makes sense and all that. But being persistent helps. And then obviously the obvious, like I just said, if you have spelling mistakes or your resume doesn't make sense or things like that, that will stand out too. So just make sure that you're having somebody review that. And then, Michelle, I know we had talked about this in our initial meeting, but follow the application directions. So if it asks for a cover letter, give your employer a cover letter. If they ask for 2 writing samples, make sure you give them 2 writing samples, not 1, because they're fielding a lot of applications and they'll probably only take the ones that follow the directions seriously.
Yeah, I cannot tell you how many times that I say, "Okay, here are the directions for applying," and people just do not regard that at all. They just completely ignore that. And it's frustrating because we have a process for a reason, and I have to go back and be like, "Okay, can you please, do it this way?" So yeah, definitely follow the directions. Madeline, what about you? What are some of your interviewing and applying tips?
I would say focus on sometimes the quality of your resume and of who you're applying to rather than always the quantity. It's really easy to go click like LinkedIn Easy Apply and apply to like 30 jobs right then. you can also see that they already have over 200 applicants. So that's not really going to be your best bet all the time. So again, making sure you tailor everything, using keywords from the job description in your resume and in your cover letter, like automatically will filter out your resume if people are using like any kind of AI for hiring. Also, again, making sure you know who you're sending your cover letter to. If you have to email someone to ask for a name, do it, because writing to your hiring manager is not going to cut it. And I also think just, again, being persistent, responding quickly when you do have interview requests. And like sometimes that process happens very quickly. So you kind of need to be on your game, ready to go, ready to interview, send writing samples, all of that.
Thanks, Madeline. And you know what? This is actually a sort of a bonus question for you guys. How did you know that where you are applying was a good fit for you? I think that, we go in, like, I think people go into communications, they're like, I'm going to do the PR. But there's a lot of different kinds of PR and there's a lot of different kinds of cultures and whatnot. So how did you know? I mean, was it based on the job description? What was it?
Yeah, I guess I would say for me, I knew that I was in the right place, just based on the staff around me. Like when like I had explained earlier, I was very green when I came into this job, and I may not have had all of my skills sharpened, but I was surrounded by a lot of industry pros that have helped me along the way. So I guess this applies to just when you apply for a job, really understand, if possible, who the staff is around you. You can always look on the website and see who's who the staff is. And I realized right away that I was surrounded by a lot of people who would help my professional development. And that has honestly bought me a lot of time to sharpen my skills. And I know we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but just knowing that I was a good fit for this job, or a better fit for this job than I may have even thought at the beginning. Like I may have thought, oh man, I don't have all the skills on the job description, but turns out that I've been given the opportunity to develop those skills with, an incredible staff. So
I would say being able to meet so many people on the Novitas team. I got to talk with Michelle and with our VP and manager and other employees, and really get a sense for like what they all did in their day to day and who they were. And I just really like connected with them that way. I remember I was in one interview and no one had their cameras on. And I was the only one with my camera on, and it was a hiring manager and a VP. And it made me so uncomfortable that they couldn't even turn on their cameras, that I was like, I don't think this is a good fit for me.
That was not at Novitas.
No, it was not.
Thanks, Madeline, and thanks, Jake. So we talked a little bit about what you should put on your resume. Can you guys talk a little bit about what you think is important to be on your resume, and what you think that people have responded well to? Hiring managers.
yeah, I would say, there are a lot of templates out there, and I see a lot of the same resumes. And that's fine as long as your resume, like, think about, I don't want to call it the design of, because they're probably all like, most of them are Word templates, but make sure it looks clean. I guess that's the best way to say it. Like if you just have a regular Word document with a million words on it, inevitably human nature, your employer is going to open that up and be like, wow, this is not easy to digest. So I would say make your resume very digestible. As far as what you should have on there, if there are some things from high school that make sense, if you were, the president of the PR club, that makes sense to put on your resume if you're applying for a PR job. But, just kind of think about what would stand out to your employer if they're looking at it. Any communications experience that you have, I'd say any leadership experience that you have stands out as well. But be concise and really think about what you're putting on there, because you don't really need everything.
Also, we are like living in a digital age. Like you can hyperlink things on your resume. I hyperlinked a portfolio to my resume so that people could see the project specifically that I worked on. And then I went through on each job description and linked the projects directly to which job experience I had. So just making sure that you utilize like all tools possible. And again, go through and make sure you have all the keywords from the job posting on your resume. Also, I did a lot of like A/B testing on my resume. So I sent out a lot of resumes with one design and a lot with a different design. And then I switched up colors, stuff like that, to sort of see what caught people's attention and what worked. I also just printed out a bunch of resumes, gave them all my friends and made them highlight things that they liked, of just how it looked, just design wise, and things that they didn't. So I filtered out things that way as well. Also, we are in a creative role, so like don't be afraid to do something more creative on your resume. My resume was pink. Not a lot of pink, but a little pink because it's my favorite color and I thought it helped my personality shine through. I know that's not typical in other types of jobs, like anything in STEM, probably not the way to go, but it worked for me.
And, just to add on to the things that Jake and Madeline said, one of the things that I look for when I'm looking over a resume is that you've had experience that this job could build upon. So my advice to you, and I know some of you are probably older and looking to graduate soon, but is to do some internships in PR. I know that for some people that's difficult because you have to have a job while you're in school. I did too. I actually, the way I ended up in PR after being pre-med for a semester was that I had to have a campus job. And so my sorority sister got me into the Office of University Communications. And that's where my PR career took off. But look for ways that you can sharpen your skills, get real life experience, because listen, they teach you a lot of stuff in the comms department at universities, or whether you're in comms or not, that you're learning a lot of stuff about PR, but it's really different when you're actually living it day to day and you have to do the things day to day, and everything's really outcome based. And for us, we have a lot of we have to report to our clients, and our clients are depending on us to do some various things. And so if we aren't hitting our KPIs, key performance indicators, then our clients are going to be unhappy or sad. So I'll look for opportunities to do real world PR work. Like I said, I didn't major in PR. I majored actually in business. My school did not have a PR degree. And I'm old, so that not every school had a comms degree either. And so I majored in business, and I did, I think, like 6 or 8 internships during my college career. And I actually feel like that put me on a really solid footing for succeeding at my first PR job as well. So Madeline, do you want to talk a little bit about, speaking of real life experience, a day in the life of an agency? What do you do all day?
I have no idea. No, I'm just kidding. I basically start my day around 8:07, not 8 o'clock.
Madeline's chronically late, but I'm not there either. So
today I was actually really early. It was like 7:45. So I start my day usually by doing media clips. So scanning the news to see what people are talking about regarding my clients and their industry. And I'll send those to our clients. And then I'll start working on any usually I'll try to pitch in the morning. So if I have any stories I need to pitch to media, I'll do that for like the first half of the day, and then move on to like any deliverables I need to work on, which might be like writing a press release or doing social media or writing an op-ed, something like that. And then just managing the rest of like the ins and outs, whether there's a meeting or just something comes up. Sometimes things just come up and you have to stop what you're doing and work on that and be able to pivot really quickly. So that's sort of why every day is different, because we're always like changing tasks and needing different things for different clients and stuff like that.
And what about you, Jake? So you've been promoted, I think, a couple times, right?
Yeah.
So, but you did start out in as an associate or whatever the lowest role is. So can you talk a little bit about that? And then maybe also talk about how, like, what it was that um allowed you to be promoted? What were some of the skills or some of the things that really worked for you?
Yeah. So yeah, no, I started out as an intern at CIG. So I've been here in various roles throughout my time. But even starting out as an intern in that entry level role after that, it's a lot of it is just really being dependable and kind of using, I really like what you said, Michelle, is using those first couple years as an extension of school. And so yeah, I mean, a lot of it is media list building. A lot of it is, media tracking, not as much face-to-face client work, but being ready for when maybe your project manager has a meeting and they say, hey, can you reach out to the client and just let them know that we'll send the media list later. So just one thing I like to say is, if you don't have to, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. So if you are just ready to go and you're dependable, I think people around you will notice that. You don't have to be a PR pro from the first 6 months that you get into the job. But just kind of soaking things in, and especially at a place, like CIG or any other PR agency, it's like there are some pros there that you can just soak things in and learn from their experiences. So that would be my advice in that entry level role. But as far as the day to day here at CIG for our entry level folks, it's like a lot of media building, a lot of critical mention, decision stuff, tracking media, um, collateral drop offs, a lot of the dirty work, honestly, that a lot of people may not want to do or don't have the endurance to do. But if you outlast that, you'll find yourself learning and then creating other opportunities for yourself.
What do you think was your biggest surprise when you joined an agency or in your first job? Like, what was the biggest difference, Madeline, between what you learned in school and what your first job is?
One, I never knew how to do a media list or some deliverables that I immediately learned at Novitas. That was pretty quick, but we didn't learn that in school. No one told me like what to be looking for and how to, like, I know you always say like your pitch is only as good as your list. I learned how to pitch, but I didn't know the list part. So that was like a quick learning curve. I would also say just like all of like the learning to talk to people, like talking with clients and like being held accountable wasn't always something like we did really at school because I worked on a lot of projects, but I had fake clients and didn't have to reach out to them, right? So sometimes like, you have to test out a few ideas, ask them what they think. Like you can't always just do like the one thing you want to do, I guess. And that's sort of what it was like in college. Does that make sense?
Right, because your clients didn't like give you feedback.
Right.
Right. Jake, what was the biggest surprise for you? Unmute. Jake, you're still muted.
Oh my God, I just went on for a while. That was my mute moment. Okay. Um,
Madeline, you're next.
yeah. Okay. The biggest surprise for me was just the impact that I had as an entry level employee. And I know I talked a little bit about the dirty work and maybe some of the stuff that you may not want to do at first, but I remember even being an intern or an entry level type role and being in meetings with a big O tires. We worked on the winter driving campaign at CIG through CDOT, and we were trying to put together a partner list of people for the campaign. And I remember being in a meeting with Big O Tires Western Slope general manager, like somebody who's pretty prominent in their industry, and they're coming to meet with CDOT and we're the consultant. So it's like you may find yourself in some situations where you have to grow up fast, which was a surprise to me at the moment. But now that I look back, I'm like, well, your role was valuable, and you played a big part in some of those campaigns. So it was surprising, I guess, at certain points.
That's awesome, Jake. Thank you. And so we talked a little bit about this. How do you, what do you think is the best way to prepare for a career in PR? What are some of the expectations people should set for themselves? Madeline, do you want to go?
Always being flexible. I mean, I think, again, that's something that you sort of learn in your first job rather than in school, because a lot of the work that we do, it's just learn as you go. But I think always being flexible and like managing your own expectations, figuring out how long it takes to like do certain tasks to sort of know how like your day is going to go. Just things that you just have to learn how to pivot and like work on different things, and just overall know that you're going to get everything done, I guess.
Yep, it's a pretty fast pace in PR. And listen, as we talked about, and Madeline's probably experienced some of this, although Madeline is a superstar, and so she, I'm sure that her learning curve was not as great as some. It'll take you longer to do things than you want it to. It'll take you longer to do things when you first start in PR than you expect, or there'll be more turns of a document. Sometimes Madeline sends things to me to edit, or to Devin, our manager, to edit. And then she gets it back and she's like, oh man, I thought I was done with this document. This is the worst. I don't want to see this document ever again. And here it is back in my inbox. So give yourself a little bit of grace, but also expect that since it's going to take you longer, you might not be done at like 4:54 p.m. It might be like 5:30 or whatnot. So my advice to people, just to really mentally prepare to be a sponge and learn everything, but give yourself a break too. Jake, what about you?
No, I mean, I totally agree with that. It's just being flexible. Like I said, just I like how you put that, actually, Michelle, giving yourself grace, like being easy on yourself and knowing that it is a process and you're not going to be, PR person of the year in the first 3 weeks. It's a learning process, just like everything, and just to really soak everything in and really learn from the staff that's built around you, and just dedicate yourself to your job, And so I agree with everything everybody else said.
Also, you should always want to learn everything and say yes to everything, like just to try it out. You never know like what you're going to enjoy and like what kind of work you actually like to work on. I thought I wanted to work on more like short form, and I like more long form work. But originally I was like, oh, like I like social media. Not my favorite thing in the world, but I still do it.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point too, is that in your entry level years, try everything, and then you can really realize your strengths. And then as you develop as a professional, lean into those strengths. You can say, hey, maybe social media is not my thing. I'm going to give that up and spend more of my time, writing press releases or whatever that is. But just developing those skills and leaning into what you enjoy and are good at.
I also want to encourage all of you who are watching this that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So when you're in your first job, often you're doing things that, some of these repetitive tasks, it's not that exciting. But the deal is that once you master these things, then you get to learn other cool things. And so, once you are great at clips, and, clips might only take you 30 minutes or something, and nobody wants to be great at clips. That is not going to get you the C-suite, but you have to know how it works so that you can do strategy, or so you can do other tactics. And once you have a mastery of some of the tactics, then you get to be a strategist, right? And you get to, once you know how they all work together and what kind of levers you can press. Then you get to understand how the strategy works. And then there are more sophisticated skills. For us, it's like client service or keeping your accounts profitable or, things like that. There's a lot of different ways you can go for sure. But yeah, keep yourself flexible, try everything. I mean, Madeline, for one of her first projects was a presidential assassination. So just say yes to everything. You never know where it'll land. Not that presidential assassinations are funny, but so I do want to open this up to questions. If anybody has questions who's attending. So many Henrys on there. No questions, anybody? Raise your hand. Henry's? Paige, anyone?
So another one of my interview tips is to always have questions.
Looks like we got one. We got a question here from Henry H.
Okay, Henry Hargrave. In the job description, should you just stick to the description or talk about other things you can do? That's a really good question. Jake, what do you think?
I would say stick to the job description to start, but like I said, if there are any other leadership experience or skills that you have, I think that that's valuable, because a lot of the stuff that you'll be doing right off the bat, the biggest thing is just being dependable. So anything that can show how dependable you are, honestly, is valuable. But start with the job description, and if there's some room left, I would say look into some other stuff as well. Hope that answers your question.
And listen, the way I look at this is when you're just coming out of college, you're starting your career, there's two ways you have to be a good employee, right? You have to be a great employee, interpersonally with your colleagues, whatnot. And you have to be able to, you have to have a great attitude and have soft skills, but you also have to have hard skills. And so I think anything that can demonstrate what the different sort of skills you bring to the table are, whether it's soft or hard skills, I think that's really great.
Yeah, and I'm also seeing just their question they put after they wanted it to be more about the interview. So I guess that my answer kind of was more for the resume, but for the interview, I would say the most important thing, honestly, in an interview for me is just showing who you are. Like I said, most of the time I am listening to what you are saying, of course, but there are no right answers. So just kind of show who you are. And as far as the job description, just do your research and just know about the company and show the interviewers why you are applying to their company. I guess that's a short answer.
I see another question. And I think this is for either you or me, Jake, and I can just start quickly and then turn it over to you. How is the transition from behind the scenes entry-level work to taking on more client-facing responsibilities? Do you enjoy working with clients directly? I think that working with clients directly is my favorite part of the job. I have very close personal relationships with my clients. I know what's happening in their lives. I throw them baby showers. Perhaps could use some more boundaries. But transitioning from being sort of a worker bee to a client-facing role, I thought was really difficult. Because I made a lot of dumb mistakes. Like I didn't really understand my role. And so like, for example, I remember sitting in a meeting with Eugene Scalia. He's the son of the Supreme Court Justice, former Supreme Court Justice. And I was like, oh my gosh, you guys should, if you don't know your messages, you should do flashcards. And my boss was like, are you kidding me? Like, you should do flashcards for them, Michelle. That is your job. Um, or, I kept emailing our client because I was so excited. We kept getting all this great media. I'm like, did you see this? And she was like, she kept responding back, like, if you could just send me one email, that would be great. And I was like, oh, I just come on. So I thought it was a little bit difficult to navigate personally, but I don't know, Jake, what do you think?
Yeah, I think the transition for me, I was lucky because a lot of I'm working on a few of the same projects that I started out working on. So I've had that kind of linear experience where when I started, I was doing a lot of, one-off tasks. So it's like, all right, I got to do this list. I got to, reach out to these people. I got to call these people. And then as you kind of continue to do that, you start to see the bigger picture of putting together an entire campaign of, like Michelle, you were talking about, it becomes less about a task and more about a strategy. So I would say it was natural for me, but I was lucky in the sense that I'm working on the same project. So I could kind of see the evolution of what I was doing within the project that I'm working on. And I do like working with clients directly. I enjoy getting to know someone and, learning their quirks and what I can do to make their lives easier as far as work and what I can deliver to the client. So I really enjoy that direct client interaction.
And Madeline, you're sort of in the throes of this. Like, what do you think?
I think that I guess I've always been working with clients a little bit, like sending my work directly to them and taking on like those kinds of responsibilities and challenges. I like it. I think that it gives like everything you do like a little bit more meaning. Like you know where it's going, you know how it's affecting the client. So I've always liked it, and like I really enjoy like leading calls and being able to facilitate those relationships.
Thanks, Madeline. Are there any other questions? I think we got the ones that were in the Q&A.
Yeah, I'm just seeing one more. I just want to make sure I answer just about
Oh,
how did
sure, go ahead.
how did your background journalism prepare you for your current role? And Michelle, you could probably answer this too. You were a business, were you a business major?
Yeah,
I don't
I
want to.
mean, so totally different thing. Yeah,
Okay.
perspective from
Okay.
you, but
Okay. Well, I'll take it then. I'll take this one. So how my background in journalism just really sharpened my writing skills, because what I was doing in college was news editorial. So lots of article writing, AP style, stamped in my brain. So by the time I got to CIG, I didn't have a lot of the marketing, advertising, PR skills refined, but I could write a press release and I could, edit an article pretty well. So journalism, if you have a journalism background and if you don't too, everything is very learnable, I would say, in our industry. And I think Michelle's proof of that too, right? Like you are that top dog in the company and you had a business degree and a biology degree, and look what you were able to do. So yeah.
yeah, and frankly, I think we talked about this a little bit in our exchange before we did this call, sort of our pre-call. And I don't think you need a degree to work in PR, which I know is probably something I'm not supposed to say to people who are about to get their degree. But if you can do the job and do the work, I know a lot of people who've been very successful without a degree. It makes it easier to have a degree, I think, because you go through some of the writing and all that stuff. But PR is really there's really a skill. It's really a skill set rather than having to have a degree. But yeah, anybody can and should consider PR for a career. I think it's been very rewarding.
Yeah. And just to echo that too, we even put in our job description that even if you don't have the exact skill sets or experience that we note in our job description, we strongly encourage you to apply if the role excites you. So I think, experience comes in different forms, and just even at CIG, and I'm sure a lot of places, we just believe in cultivating a company culture that, emphasizes personal and professional growth, for our employees. So if you don't have everything that you see on a job description, don't worry, apply anyway. That would be my recommendation.
I totally second that. Yeah. I mean, and some of it for me, which has been, both great and bad, is sort of a gut thing too. You might not have all the skills, but I can tell from our interaction that you're hungry, that you're curious, that you're smart. I'd rather teach somebody who has the right, mindset and whatnot, than have somebody who comes in with all the skills and maybe isn't a great cultural fit.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Any other questions? Well, we're about an hour in, so with that, I think we can wrap it up. If there are no other questions, obviously feel free to reach out to me or Madeline or Jake at any time. Sorry, Jake, I'm just volunteering you. If you have any questions about landing your first job in PR or any of the quirks of the industry. Jake, Madeline, any final thoughts?
No, this was fun. Thank you guys for everybody who organized this, and I hope some of our insights were helpful.
Yes, and good luck to everyone applying for jobs now. Please reach out if you have any questions.
Absolutely. Thanks all.